Chapter 10. At the River. I reached the river now and could hear the waves gently wishing against the stone break along the side. As I moved forward into the second leg of my journey towards my destination on the paved route, I took further notice of the invasive plant everywhere. I could only describe it as some kind of new version of oversized nettles I had never seen before, and it is overtaking all of the fruit bushes. By the time in the season it would be to pick the fruits here, there would be no way based on these nettles' growth speeds. It is almost growing up around the trees in a way to where you couldn't even get near the tree for that fruit either. I looked down towards the sand at the beach near the river, and no nettles were down there. I guess the nettles didn't like sand. I could see why. Sand gets into everything, and it's harsh on most plants. These nettles only wanted to be right where the fruit bushes and trees were. How frustratingly convenient. I moved down the path further and noticed some of the nettles had been hacked down and removed. It looked like there'd been a concerted removal effort in this spot maybe a week or so ago. The large plants were very thick at the stalk, but I imagine were easy to slice through but dangerous to fell. The stumps had already crusted over, and there wasn't much to notice at them besides how thick they were, whereas nettles, as I remember them, used to be very thin and almost fragile, like a fern. There were already new sprouts up about a foot high all around the site. The new sprouts were growing really fast, almost like bracken fiddleheads popping up around 8 inches high already. Wondering if that was already enough for them to be dangerous, I took a picture as a record and kept walking. I didn't pay much attention to the beach. There didn't seem to be anything odd washed up. There was some lizards beginning to sunbathe on the rocks, but besides that, no wildlife. I could still hear birds singing, their morning musical though. They were telling their family history, I guess, or whatever it is birds talk about day to day over bird Wi-Fi. Normally kids would be playing here, or young couples walking the beach. Maybe it was too cold or too early. It wasn't that cold or early. Shouldn't a team be digging for mussels or some salty guy trying to fish? I looked at the dock and all the rowboats and kayaks were tied up still. As I got closer to the final bend that would put me headed towards the plaza, I noticed another attempted effort at nettle removal. This one was a lot more recent. These nettles were also very stocky and were still oozing oils and were partially through a coagulation process. I took a picture with my phone's camera for my records and noticed there was a strong minty aroma in the air. It reminded me of tea almost, reminding me to take a drink of water. I got a water bottle out of my bag and downed nearly all of it, realizing I hadn't had any water in a while. I saw there were already little sprouts coming out of the ground for new nettles, and they were maybe an inch or two high. Did this possibly happen yesterday? My eyes started to get irritated a little bit that I hadn't noticed at first. I realized I should keep moving. As I walked away, I splashed some of the water in a wash rag I kept with me, then washed around my eyes, maybe thinking it was sweat. It wasn't, though, and as I wiped my face off, I felt better and the minty aroma went away. I put the now empty water bottle in my backpack, and that's when I heard gunfire erupt a mile or two away. I stopped to think about where it was relative to my location and realized there was nothing I could do. The sound echoed a bit, distorting how much was actually going on and from where. I waited a moment, but nothing came over the radio. There was no way I could get to those shots being fired. The shots weren't going to come anywhere near me, just from past experience in gun ranges and a few gun battles I'd been in over the last 6 months. I checked my watch, and I was slightly behind schedule, though, and decided I would pick up the pace to make sure I met my deadline for radio check-in. Hopefully the guys were okay. Chapter 11. Up the Beach. I rounded the corner once I got to the point where the concrete pathway met the beach. I was counting gunfire and pauses for assumed mag changes, and it sounded like our team had run into some other group. I assume it was related to the vehicles we had heard earlier. I imagined everyone on our team being fine, as I could hear everyone's ARs firing, as I had so many times in training, and then the AKs slightly less often. Then I would hear a 308 a little less often than that, which, even though I know they were all wearing special hearing inserts, was really not fun to be close to, even less fun to be on the receiving end of, though. As the special rounds he was firing went through cars and everything else that got in the way, he would only be firing if he actually saw something or knew where they were, since he could shoot through everything to get to them. Looking around where I was, there was nobody around still. I definitely imagined people should be there at this, as this was the closest part of the beach to the Allied building. Had they retreated for security due to the gunfire, or was it something else? There was only one way I was going to find out, so I kept going and kept listening. It sounded like our team was working on a surround maneuver. They were up against several handguns and maybe 2 rifles at best, based on what I was hearing. So a lot of the gunfire sounded scary to someone not used to training and tactics, but almost all of it was simply theatrics, as my team vied for position. As I walked, I tried to make sure I would be on time with how long I estimated their gun battle would last. So I thought about the whole situation a little more. People used to complain about carrying a lot of magazines, as if carrying 6 magazines was too many for self-defense. "Oh, you're carrying enough ammo to be a mass shooter," they would complain about pre-collapse. They were also hyperbolic. The term mass shooting had completely lost all of its original definition anyway, similarly to most other words completely overused. Words like literally and racist had been so diluted they were used now for almost everything. So simply carrying an extra mag for your self-defense pistol was way overboard for their consideration. Having 2 spare mags to them meant you were a full-blown psychopath, hell-bent on wiping out an entire crowd. This, of course, wasn't true, but they thought it was. But for rifles, 6 spare mags was the minimum acceptable. In reality, more like 8 magazines was about average for self-defense loadout. Each person was carrying between 6 and 8 for their rifle, another set for their sidearm. Each mag for their rifle carried 30 rounds on a standard mag. That's about 180 rounds. So when people flip their noodles about someone having 10,000 rounds of ammo in their house, that's only 55 sets of ammo roughly. That isn't even training twice a month per year, and that's only for 1 rifle. Reality is people don't think. As I imagine our team in mid-process of a surround, I kept watching, and another thought came to mind. It was about another misconception I used to always hear. People would constantly say to me, "You only ever need 6 bullets. If you need more, you're a bad shot and shouldn't have a gun." I used to tell them all the things wrong with this. First of all, whoever goes into a life or death struggle wanting the bare minimum force without a modern firearm, why would you do that when you don't even know what you're going up against? What kind of mentality is that? They, of course, never have an answer and just repeat themselves, usually because the rifle was designed for war or whatever. Well, so were M1s, but everyone had one of those, and Beretta M92s and 1911s and Colt single-action armies. And everyone had those at one point or the other. It's a stupid argument. Then I say, where did this notion of there was only ever being one attacker come into the scenario? I always noticed for their stupid arguments there was magically only ever one attacker in this theoretical home invasion. I told them, you can choose your favorite news channel. They can literally choose whichever one they want. You go look at all the home invasions and they'll see how many people are breaking in. Go look at ambushes at the drive-thru with the local fast food restaurant. How many attackers? Typically they go for overwhelming odds, obviously. It isn't one person anymore, it's 3. They have an organized plan and the trend is heading towards closer to 5. Plus, what if it's a woman? Some gal maybe with a kid in the car is supposed to fight off 5 adult males while boxed in a drive-thru? Stupid. As at this point the conversation is over and they don't want to talk anymore. They will refuse to look up this information and will say it isn't real. I know they don't want it to be real, but unfortunately it is. Sometimes these people try to say to simply fight them off, but there are cases of kids shooting home invaders. I've heard people try to say it's a masculine thing, but women defend themselves with guns too. I've also heard them try to say that people, especially women, wouldn't be able to defend themselves with firearms, but then they would be trying to take the elderly and vets' guns away next, saying they shouldn't be allowed to defend themselves for whatever stupid reason.